This is a post from Nate Silver. For most people, politics is about fitting in.
True.
And this breaks it down wonderfully. He has polling data on the top issues. Out of 16 issues, what number do you think Israel-Palestine is? Any guesses?
75.
It's the bottom.
1 through 16.
16.
16.
15.
15, yeah.
Yeah, I think abortion is 16.
Whoa.
No, I could be wrong. I don't know. Let me check. Is it? Student debt. Sorry. No, I was wrong. Yeah, women's reproductive rights actually a little bit higher on that one. But inflation among 18 to 29-year-olds, 64%. Isn't that crazy?
That's really actually a white pill, because young people being aware of what the government is doing to the value of the money that they're making is important, because the biggest problem that we have, I don't care what anyone says about Israel or whatever, the biggest problem we have is our unfunded liabilities. Medicare and Medicaid, those things will actually destroy the dollar. They will destroy the country. It doesn't matter what happens in Israel with Gaza and with Israel at all to us.
You're absolutely right.
If the dollar is destroyed. And that is 100% a possibility if we don't have a responsible government actually with responsible monetary policy. We were able to spend and print money like we did when the economy was growing because of the growth. Without that growth, we can't keep printing money like we have been. And you see the inflation, and you also see the interest rates are not actually controlling inflation like they want. It's really, really bad, and that's something that everyone needs to really pay way more attention to. So that's a white pill in my opinion.
I just love how no demographic cares about student debt at all. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, 26%. Men, 24. Females, 27. White, 24. Black, 31. Hispanic, 25. Democrats, 29. Republicans, 22. Independents, 26. Nobody cares. No. And Biden just canceled more student debt for a bunch of art students or whatever. I don't see what the point is. But inflation at 64%, everybody cares about it. That is great news. But of course, Israel-Palestine is way down here at the bottom. And it looks like Democrats have the highest at 37%. That's it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. And that's how you know, like, online is not real life, because that's all you see. I am so sick of talking about Israel, Palestinians. I'm so sick of it. And that's all you see. Yet when you go talk to the average person on the street, they're not even aware that this is even that big of a conversation. They know that.
But it's why, it's the same thing with universities.
Chat? It's not that big of a deal. You guys can stop going on and on about Israel. No one cares.
But I think part of it is universities are also like the internet, right? One person starts talking about something and it starts to seem everywhere. That's, again, why these protests are jumping from campus to campus, as opposed to suddenly, no one is going into the streets of, Akron, Ohio and saying, you must divest. Like, they're only doing that at universities for a reason. And I think that Phil's totally right. They used to say, young people are Democrats, and then they get their first paycheck and see how many taxes come out, and they're like, wait a minute, now I don't want taxes, I'm a Republican. And I think the effect of that now, the more modern take, is inflation. If you're young and trying to establish a strong financial future, it feels impossible right now, because everything costs more every single year. And even if you have a good job, the cost of living rises so dramatically that, if you're working your first job out of college and you're making, something that's like fair amount, it feels even less every single year, even if you get
just to
small
buy a
raises.
Car.
It's
they can't
impossible.
even buy a car. Forget the house and all that. Like,
buy the car, insure the car. Car insurance went up by like 25%. Groceries are up constantly. You can't think about the future. And again, that's all that the Republicans in every state need to campaign on right now: immigration, inflation, and this is something that young people are really resonating with, because they are faced with the fallout of the Biden economy.
So Nate Silver says his theory is there's two main drivers of political beliefs. Politics is self-interest, like rich people want lower taxes and sexually active women want abortion rights. And then he says politics is personal identity. Whose team are you on? But other issues have primarily symbolic stakes. These serve as vehicles for individual and group expression, not so much identity politics, but politics as identity. People are trying to figure out where they fit in, who's on their side and who isn't, and this works in both directions. People can be attracted to a group or negatively polarized by it. People have different reasons for arguing about politics and can derive value from a sense of social belonging and receiving reinforcement that the choices are honorable and righteous. And let me just pause you right there, Mr. Nate Silver. That is predominant among the left and less so among the right. The quote-unquote right, as they describe it, is, I don't know, disparate libertarians who don't like Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who is going to be speaking at the LP National Convention, which we'll talk about in a second, which is crazy. But a bunch of different factions, Christians, non-Christians. You've got like post-atheist now, where they're like, the woke is a new religion. All of the, and you have post-liberal, and you have former Democrats, all, and even liberals, classical liberals, are now all right-wing. They're not on the same team. They're all on the, those guys are crazy team. But the interesting thing about politics as personal identity as well is that also shows there's umbrellas to these different factions. Something we often would talk to Ian about because he wouldn't seem to understand what left and right meant. Left and right are umbrella terms for the different factions that exist within these spheres of influence. But on the right, people have no problem disagreeing with each other, debating each other, and getting along. On the left, it's homogenous. It is fall in line or we will cancel you. Just like at these protests where if you disagree with their insert cause of the day, you could not enter these spaces. But ultimately, I think what we get at the Nate Silver thing is, obviously, this is what we see with Black Lives Matter and the pro-Palestine stuff. It doesn't matter what they're saying. They have the exact same tactics. They create a protest for against Israel, and they create the People's Library and the People's University. That's what they did during Occupy. It doesn't matter whether it's the rich, Black Lives Matter, or Israel. They all do the exact same thing. It is basically Burning Man for these kids. And then you have that viral video where you have that, like, the people are barricaded in Columbia in the Hamilton Hall. And then they're like, they're barricading us in. And one woman goes, F you, it's finals. I want to go home. Yeah. They're basically playing cops and robbers. And they don't realize there are real consequences. And they're going to go to jail. But that's part of the radicalization process.
Yeah, but they'll get their charges dropped, or they'll be arrested, and then when it's time to
do you remember when there were the pipeline protest in North Dakota, and I think it's Shailene Woodley. She's an actress.
Yeah, she was in Divergent.
Yeah, I think so. I just remember this clip of her like handing her phone to her assistant, being like, "Keep filming," while she got arrested, because it's like a badge of honor, right? Being like, "I'm so in the know, and I'm up on the environmental causes and this, that, and the other." Some people go into protest knowing that potentially getting arrested is a risk. I don't know why the university students would not have thought of that, unless they feel like, college campus is a safe space and real life rules don't apply to them there.
I'll let you in on some advice. It's fairly obvious to anybody who watches internet video. If you ask questions at a protest, they kick you out. When you go to these, pro Hamas protests, if you start asking simple things like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? They're going to be like, okay, enough from you. And they're going to kick you out. I was at a protest in New York when Donald Trump had his, 7 dangerous countries ban. And they were all protesting, like someone bullhorning saying Trump is banning Muslims from entering the country. And so there was this woman and this guy that I had met. And I was like, why is she calling it a Muslim ban, though? Like, honest question. Because I know that this bans like North Korea and Venezuela, too. And they were just like, what's your problem, dude? And I was like, what? And they said, what's your problem? I was like, I don't have a problem. I'm just wondering, is there something about it that's like specifically about Muslims? And they were like, whatever. And they just turned around and stopped talking to me. I was like, okay, like, it's a cult. Ask questions, they throw you out.
But it even like, so, younger minds are more impressionable and they want to be social and they want to be liked in their peer groups and things like that. But you even see with adults, I know an adult male who refuses to tell his mother and his coworkers that he voted for Trump every time. And he still tells people he's a Democrat, even though he's not, and watches this show, watches a ton of other shows. And he's like, but he's afraid to come out because he's like, it'll hurt my business, it'll hurt my relationship. So think about how younger and impressionable these kids are, and they want to fit in, and they're already weird because like these are the weird kids. But like, let's be fair, they're not the cool frat guys that are like getting sun tanned by himself, like not caring about what's happening. These are the weird kids, so they already want to be included.
Well, and they're high anxiety, right? They're highly neurotic, and so they're looking for validation a lot of the time. I think part of the issue is that so a lot of younger voters don't really believe in the two-party system, right? And so they don't necessarily want to identify as Democrat or as a Republican, but they do have their enclave issues, right? They're radical feminists, or they're, whatever it is. They have something that they were like, well, because I feel like this very strongly, I'm more likely to vote for this party. And I've done this myself too. I always think of myself as conservative, and I vote Republican, but I don't necessarily think of myself as a Republican. And I think that mentality almost makes it harder for them, because they don't want to be associated with the party exactly, but they do also use the party's platform as a litmus test for their friendships, right? They don't want anyone. I remember this one girl, a girl I knew back in the day, super leftist, and she told me she would never shop at Walmart because that's where racists shop. What? That doesn't make any sense at all. But it's this idea that people who you don't like act a certain way, and so you go out of your way to avoid even seeming like them, even though you don't even know if you want to be a part of the group that you could potentially be a part of.
Weren't there two girls that were just interviewed, and they were like, I don't actually know why I'm protesting. There was a clip of that just recently, right?
Very, very, very.
They don't know what they're doing. They just
it's Burning Man.
They just
say,
want to
hey,
have
look,
fun.
We're
This
gonna go.
seems cool.
We're gonna go hang out in the grass. We're gonna put up tents. There's gonna be food and drinks, and we're gonna read books. We're gonna do story time. And then we're going to bar Jews from coming on campus, because that's what they did at UCLA, because they wanted you to agree with them, and the Jewish students wouldn't do it. And this is what ultimately leads to these clashes. So here's the thing. I'm at the point where I have a question about, for you guys. So these protests, most of the people there have no idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. Having experience at protests, I imagine if you walk up to the average person, they might even say, I'm not protesting. I was just here to check it out. And that's maybe 40 or 50% of the people there were just like, oh, my friends told me they were going to be down here. I'm not really for a protest or anything. I'm just here. They get caught up in those protests. But when people are saying these protests are anti-Semitic, I have to actually wonder, the issue I suppose is, if there are 10 people at UCLA who have decided they will not let Jewish students in this place, and no one else in the camp will stop them from barring Jewish students, then you basically have a protest that just doesn't like Jews. It just keeps Jewish students out. If a Jewish student walks up, and this is on video, and he's wearing a Star of David, and he says, I'm just trying to go to my class, and they won't let him in. And the other protesters are in there going, we're not anti-Semitic, we're just critical of Israel. And it's like, well, the people that you are supporting, that you are providing resources for, are blocking a Jewish student from coming in, and you do nothing about it. If you provide resource to someone who is intentionally targeting Jewish students, I'm just going to go ahead and call you all anti-Semitic. I understand there's legitimate criticisms of Israel. That's fine. But if you've got people who are standing next to you expressing the intent to target Jewish students, and you're like, yeah, that's fine. We respect a diversity of tactics. I'm like, okay, well, then you're all anti-Semitic.
But they're not just anti-Semitic. I think the greater thing is that they're anti-Semitic, but they're anti-Christian too. There was a video that I had reposted where the guy's like, this is Christians' fault. Okay, now we're blaming the Christians, right?
But we're not passing an anti-Christian bill. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, but this isn't it's not even about that. They're finding any cause that they can find to riot, to be destructive, because their real goal is destruction of this country. Mm-hmm. That I don't think they even really care that much about what's going on there. It's just an excuse to be able to cause mayhem, to break down the systems here.
I'm going to give you a good example. There was I believe it was a Patriot Prayer rally in the Pacific Northwest, and a guy showed up doing Nazi salutes and saying racial slurs, and they threw him out immediately and screamed in his face and said, get out of here, you don't represent us. The media then lied and said, look at this guy who was at this rally. But the right had no problem saying, no, you're out, we do not agree with you. The left is like, we're cool with it. And then I'm like, okay, well, look, man, when there's a video of it's like 6 people linking arms and blocking a Jewish student from coming in. There's another one where they have a barricade set up and there's a couple students standing outside it, and there's just one guy standing there holding it, not letting him in. And there's not a single response, no rejection of the tactic. I'm just going to go ahead and assume they're all lying, and they literally just conflate any Jewish student with Israel, and they see it as one thing. That being said, the anti-Semitism bill saying you can't criticize the Israeli government comparing it to Nazis is anti-Semitic is stupid.
No, it's not stupid, but it also feeds into what these people are saying. Like, oh, you can't criticize Israel. God forbid you criticize Israel. Oh, the only reason why they're going into these camps and taking them down, they didn't for Chaz or BLM. It's because it's Israel. See how much control Israel has on the U.S. government. And this is exactly what feeds into that narrative. And Republicans can be out of touch all they want and think it's a messaging bill, and they're messaging to these, average independent Jewish voters, or even like Jewish voters that are unhappy with the Biden administration and what's going on. But you're also feeding those narratives that the Jews control everything thing.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.